Gaming NBS, episode 102. Welcome to Gaming NBS, sponsored by GameholeCon, gaming convention coming to us in Madison in November. Get your ass to GameholeCon. Visit GameholeCon.com for more information. I'm one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brett. Welcome to the show, folks. Glad to have you here.
Yeah. Woot woot.
Damn nice day today, Sean. It was like gorgeous outside.
Beautiful.
It was nice. Got the old bow out, did some archery in the backyard with the kids. Felt good. It was nice.
You were playing Robin Hood.
A little bit. Working out some frustration. Put a couple character sheets up, punched some holes through them. I think I'm ready. I think I'm getting ready. A little GM prep work, you know.
Yeah.
So shall we just dive into it? We got a couple long encounters later.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. Announcements, some quick ones. Excuse me, a couple reminders, I should say, up front. Actually, shit, all these are reminders. Evercon.org. It's in January next year. Start your gaming year off right. Come run some games for us. Head out to the website. Get some games in. I'm hoping to get Sean and a few other people to come. We got Ken Height showing up. We've got artists. We've got all sorts of cool people going to be there. It'll be fun. Please show. It'll be a blast. Gamehole. If you're flying into Madison, do you need the Gaming NBS Uber? Well, Sean P. Kelly can hook you up. Sean, tell them more about that service you're offering.
If you are coming to GameholeCon in November and you show up on Thursday into Madison Airport and need a ride, contact Sean Kelly of Gaming NBS, and he will come out to you, pick you up, and take you to your hotel. That's right, but he will need ample notice of when you're coming in. Sorry, Thursday or Wednesday may not apply.
We actually picked up somebody last year, and he didn't have nearly enough pocket change when we shook him down. So if you do take advantage of the Uber, I would appreciate it if you would carry larger bills. That would be nice. The Gaming BS Patron, we're going to be doing some updates on that. Sean and I had a little breakfast powwow on yesterday, and talked about some different ideas, changing levels, putting some different kind of rewards out there. So that's coming soon. Don't have all the details yet, but we threw out some pretty cool stuff back and forth, I think. And as a reminder, if you are in the Buffalo, New York area, Queen City Conquest is coming in September. I am on my way there. I've got the wonderful Mr. Chris Sneezak of Misdirected Mark fame has offered to give me a place to crash. I've got he and Phil Vecchione and Bob Everson and a host of really cool folks out there. And going to be out there gaming, hanging out, having some fun. That's September 9th through September 11th. Go to their website in the show notes, of course, queencityconquest.com. Sweet. I think that's about it for announcements, man.
Excellent. Let's get into Random Encounter.
Do it.
Random Encounter. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Like, it's just Random Encounter. And if you don't know after 100 episodes...
Start at 1 and work your way forward, and you'll get
right.
the gist of it.
That's right.
All right, I'm going to take the first one because the next one feels like I've pre-read the second one, and I need to steel myself. I've got an extra beer here in front of me just so I can get through that one because it's I think the Mr. Carruthers, and the next one is going right for the throat on the old Brettster. So anyway, start off with something a little more friendly. Angela Murray emails us and says, "Hey guys, first off, belated congratulations on hitting 100 episodes. I feel like a dumbass for having missed sending congratulations ahead of time, but Gen Con and buying a house ate my brain. Whoa, good Lord, girl. That's a lot. Gen Con planning and buying a house at the same time? Absolutely forgiven. Thank you for saying nice things, though." She says, "No excuses, though. You guys are awesome and deserve the accolades. This is a great show, and I hope it keeps going for a long while to come. Second, I did have a thought, shocking I know, on the latest episode. When it comes down to it, I don't think prep or improv has much to do with whether or not a GM is good. Good GMs, regardless of their prep or play style, do two things. They bring the world of the game to life, making a living, breathing place. Then they make the players feel like their PCs matter in that world. I played both good and bad games with GMs that wing it and GMs that prep all day, every day. In fact, I actually experienced the herding cat syndrome happen in either games. It's just that the improv GM is like a hyperactive squirrel running all over the yard trying to keep up with the players going in different directions, while the prep GM is steadily losing their cool as they try and shove the players back onto the plot train. Woo, train!
Train. Did somebody say train?
Someone said train. There we go. Angela goes on and says, prep GMs can lose their player engagement by being too strongly tied to their version of what the plot should be, regardless of who the PCs are, while improv GMs can lose that engagement by not bringing any consistency or relevance into the sandbox their players are messing around in. Ultimately, whatever style the GM has, it makes me feel like my character is a living, breathing part of the game world, and I really need to know what happens next. They're doing it right. Again, thanks for putting out such an awesome show each week. Angela, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yes, Angela.
All right. I think I feel good there. She said some nice things. Why don't you read what Mr. Carruthers has to say? To my face! He's coming for me. I can feel it.
James Carruthers emails us, Hi, Sean and Brett. As always, I love your banter.
He's trying to soften me up. He's softening me up.
Oftentimes, I'm totally content to listen and hopefully pick up a few gems from whatever the discussion of the week is. But sometimes, while I'm listening, I just want to jump into the conversation and say, hey, dumbass, with all due respect, what about this? This and this? Screw the Rules was one of those episodes.
Oh, well, here it is. I figured we'd have at least one listener want to punch me dead in the face. Here we go.
Please don't take this as criticism. I just really enjoyed this topic, and it made me want to participate. See, Brett, I'm on here to goad listeners like James.
Okay, all right.
Because if we're like, hey, it's kumbaya on here, and everything we say makes sense, then everybody's kind of like, yeah, it's all good, man. Cool. I don't even know why I'm listening to these guys because, well, I just agree with them all the time.
Nice. All right, keep going.
All right. Okay. So, Brett said, I don't want to fuck up the game by slowing it down to look up a rule. Seriously? How about I don't want to fuck up a game by getting the rules wrong? I think this discussion would have greatly benefited from a little organization into a few key categories.
I think that could be said of most of our shows.
True.
Actually, I think that's a fair critical assessment of about 101 shows. So that's pretty good. Pretty good.
That's James has got it. Bam.
Boom in my face.
For example, the difference between omitting a rule because it's a group decision versus omitting a rule on the fly as an edict of Rule 0. Plus, I think table management would have been an important subcategory to help this discussion, as well as the question, what are the consequences of omitting a rule?
Okay, all right.
Okay. Do you want to address any of that right now?
No, I think my statement of I don't want to slow it down by looking up a rule, I still stand by that because that's why I feel I don't really care if I get the rule wrong, which is why I'm more than happy to have a table rule made on the fly between the players and I. I would rather do that sometimes. At least that tends to be a thing in my past or current gaming approach. So, okay, good stuff. No, I like this. This makes sense.
So Sean opened the discussion by insisting that Brett answer the question, why would you omit a rule? In answer, I would love to have heard Brett say, well, there are a few things to consider. One, group buy-in on throwing out a rule versus an on-the-fly Rule 0 call by the DM. Or two, using table management tactics to handle rules, lookups before just glossing it over or throwing it out. And three, the consequences of forgoing the rules. Here's what I mean.
I think James needs to read our show notes.
He does.
He's way more organized than we are. Anyway, no, that makes sense. I like that. I think had we busted out like this, that may have helped a bit. So
yes.
He has examples.
He does. Here's what he means. Group decision versus Rule 0. This is an important distinction because it has to do with managing expectations. If someone builds a super athletic character and at a key moment says, the villain did what? Okay, I grab him. Grappling has begun and Brett freezes in terror.
I wouldn't say in terror. Brett never
freezes. Brett never freezes in terror.
No, it's more of a wailing and gnashing of teeth and a rending of my garments.
Yes. So the grappling rules get set aside even though being able to grab and pin someone is integral to the way the player built their character. Okay. Okay. Now, I would say that if the player built their character around the grappling piece, it would behoove the player to actually know those rules.
Yeah, I would expect in that case, and this is a good point. In that case, one of the pieces we touched on, what the player could or maybe should bring to a table. We talked about this back in episode 50 when we had Phil and Chris on, is that if you're going to have a character that specializes in a certain thing, in this case grappling, you damn well better know the grappling rules as a player. If you're going to specialize in it, I'm expecting you as the player to know that, which gets into the group decision component, right? If you know the grappling rules better than Brett does, that's totally cool. You're more than happy. Step up, speak up, and we can go right through it.
Right.
Keep going.
Did they know Brett would merely hand wave their grappling opportunities or gloss over them when they made their character? Again, if it was on the player, that would be, in my opinion, a moot point. But I see where he's coming from. All right.
Absolutely. No, his point is valid. Point is valid.
Think of it this way. If someone were to cast a spell Time Stop, for example, assuming it's a rarely used spell in your games as it is in mine, would you rule zero it and just narrate its result off the top of your head? No. So my answer would be no, but I would expect the person that's going to cast it to have the PHB open reading it.
Which is, as he says, would you ask the player to look it up, resolve the scene?
Exactly, yes. So I know what I do. He says, in my humble opinion, the spell book is there for a reason, and we bring our books to the table each game session for a reason. So I think
right there, that is an excellent example, and that is going to stick in my head going forward. Right, is instead of a group decision, rule zero, something along those lines, just saying, nah, I don't want to do it. If you look at it and say, what would happen if they cast a spell no one understood? We'd look up the spell. Why is this any different than looking up a spell? Just because grappling, quote unquote, stops the action, it's no different than time stop stopping the action. I don't know what the fuck time stop does either. I'd have to look it up. So yeah, okay, no, I get it. That is a very good analogy. Yeah. That's very good. I like that.
Table management. So this is number 2 point. Table management. Brett seems to have very serious concerns about slowing down the pace of play by looking up a rule. So he plays the rule zero card regardless of whether or not the actual written rule is good or bad.
That's because I'm better than the rules. No, I'm kidding.
Well, right. Yes. Anyways, instead, the decision to go with rule zero seems to pivot merely on whether or not Brett himself knows the rule. Brett also seemed to feel that looking up a rule necessarily freezes the whole table, to which I would cry, "Fie! That is almost never necessary." I think this can be unfortunate to sacrifice rules for the sake of flow. See consequences below, because I think it can be fairly easily handled with good table management so that neither the flow nor the rules need to be compromised. Do you want me to go into an example or do we want to comment?
No, go do it. Go do the example.
For example, the characters in my game recently ended up fighting underwater. Off the top of my head, I was pretty sure that tridents, daggers, and short swords would work fine, but I couldn't remember how it affected other weapons, ranged weapons, and spells. All I had to do was ask one of my players, whose turn had just completed, so he had a few minutes of downtime until the round of action would circle back to him, to look it up while I kept things moving by making a quick, temporary rule zero call if needed. Or, even better, just move the spotlight to another PC to say, okay, while he's doing that, what do you do from your position on the quay? In quite short order, the rules looker-upper had his finger on it. FYI, the table of contents and indexes do actually work.
That does make sense. We talked about this we had some different feedback last episode in 101. We had some other feedback on this that we got into. And I think actually a little bit, anyway, we had another listener come in around the same thing. And I have admitted and stated before, my buddy Alpha is our table rules lawyer. If you need to know a rule and Alpha doesn't know it, somebody's looking it up usually. I get what he's saying here. This totally makes sense. I think that I probably came off overly heavy-handed, but I do, and And again, this is a Brett perception. Like, I don't like slowing down the table. And what's goofy is it's probably a Brett imposed feeling reaction, and no one else gives a shit at the table. No one else may care because, like, hey, look, it's part of the game. Sometimes you gotta look up a rule. But for whatever reason, in my thick head, is I don't want to do that. There's something that's making me not want to do it. Which, and if I'm thinking about what Phil or Chris would say, maybe this is a play better games, damn it scenario where, like, look, if there is there a rule set that would be better for Brett for that style of play, or do I need to change my style of game mastering, or just the little roadblock in Brett's head? So anyway, this is good stuff to think about. I like this.
So I have a question for you, Brett.
Shoot.
If you run into this situation in this scenario, or when you do or have, do you find out what the rule is and then incorporate it moving forward? Or is it kind of like when it comes up again, either somebody else will look it up and have knowledge of that? So I guess the question is what is your habit in, because sometimes it's like, okay, great, I don't know that rule, we're going to move on now. And then at the end of the session, I will look it up, and then moving forward, it'll be that.
Correct.
Is that how you roll?
That's how we've been doing it more and more lately, yes.
Okay. And
it's safer. It's safer. In fact, it's actually less disruptive than me kneecapping somebody who dares to question my judgment. I found it's a little bit nice trying to get more players at the table this way.
Well, yeah, there is something to be said about keeping players, I guess. I guess. No,
seriously, though, you're right. You're dead on, Sean. So what'll happen is we ran into a rule, God, I can't remember what it was a while back, and Alpha were playing Pathfinder, and Alpha went, shit, I think we're doing that wrong. He couldn't find it. Everyone was like, it was a really tense action moment, and I said, Alpha, I'm thinking it should be X and Y and Z. How about this math equation? We all went, yeah, that makes sense. Let's go with it. After it was done, we took a break, and we looked it up, went, we were close, but not quite. It should have ran like this. You know what, though? It worked. It was fine. Let's just do this going forward, and that's what we did.
I agree with James. Like, I tend, if it doesn't affect the consequences, the turn order, what somebody else's action may do to the next person in initiative, in a standard initiative type of game, I will skip somebody as they look up a rule that may apply to somebody else or apply to what their situation is. And once they got that, come back to them.
Makes sense.
Right.
And this could all just because I have a short attention span when it comes to this stuff. I want to keep going. I'm on a roll, and I don't want to stop.
There's all kinds of reasons, Brett, for you. That's cool.
I have many issues, many and varied.
Right.
The list is extensive. I could give it to you alphabetically or chronologically.
Yes.
Anyway, carry on.
Consequences of omitting a rule. This is his last one. Grappling can be an awesome, non-lethal way of managing or engaging or even averting lethal combat, which, especially in D&D, is a rare alternative, let's face it. Plus, it can lead to so much wackiness and fun when the shambling mound, or whatever, just rears up out of the water, grabs the wizard, and begins trudging off into the swamp at full speed while the rest of the party tries to chase after at half speed through the swampy terrain. Oh, wait, did I just say chase? So the consequences of omitting this rule are tremendous. It could seriously detract from a PC's build and style, and so many alternative combat scenarios would be missed. Brett, seriously, you need to overcome your fear of grappling rules. Try 5e's version, super easy, adding a whole new category of fun.
I'm not afraid of them. I just don't like them. I mean, I just read the Cypher Systems grappling rules. Fuck, that's the way to go right there.
Brett is not afraid of anything.
That's not true. There's a couple things. If you corner my wife, she'll tell you a few things. But anyhow, I get it. I think a lot of this comes down to take a second, look it up. Use the spell analogy that James used at the beginning. What would happen if someone cast a spell no one had used before or that you didn't quite remember?
Right.
You'd look it up, wouldn't you? Yes, you would. Of course you would. Well, damn it. Use the same. It takes 5 seconds to do that. It takes 5 seconds to verify grappling. Not that big a deal.
Now, in all fairness to Brett, I don't know why I'm defending this guy, but bear with me, James.
Nice.
If Brett is... Because we're hung up on Brett being the GM, rule 0. A rule is going to slow down the game. Brett wants to expedite it and keep things moving and everybody within kind of what is going on right at that time. And by looking up the rule, Brett, you can correct me because I'm speaking for you, but looking up the rule would break immersion.
Right? Yeah, it breaks it in that scene, that moment.
Right.
Everyone, your blood is up. It's tense. It's fun. Action's happening. Action's going and moving.
Well, that's not to say that the way Brett handles it is, yes, it may not be the rule as written, but that's not to say that the way Brett handles it isn't going to facilitate what James is kind of outlining.
I think that's one of the pieces, right? Because the unfortunate part here is that if James were on the show with us right now, we're sitting at a table.
Yeah, where are you, James? Hey, James, where are you, buddy? Huh? What's up? Come on.
But if we were at Gamehole, or we're sitting at a bar and we're talking, and James would be like, "Brett, dude, whoa, the fuck, man, what about?" And having this back and forth, I'm pretty sure by the halfway through this conversation, we'd be on the same page. I love the spell analogy he's got is just perfect. That's really ringing true to me right now.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, right? It's a very hard conversation to have when we spout our BS. Listener wants to strangle their podcatcher. They write in, we comment back, so it is very kind of ping pong. But regardless, we'll move on.
This is good.
Here is another one with consequences that you guys touched on. Attunement. Attunement is meant to lead to important and meaningful character decisions because you can only attune to 3 items at once. All the magic items in the DMG are listed in alphabetical order, and it says in the first line of the description of each item whether or not it requires attunement. Get the player to look it up.
Yep, I threw out the attunement component as a fuck you, Sean. What are the rules for attunement? You think you're so smart. That's kind of what I did.
I wish I would have just shit that here.
It just went blah.
I just looked it up 2 seconds ago.
That'd have been funny as hell.
I've had to do that 3 or 4 times now.
That's another good point. I mean, if you're like, look, you need to attune to it. It's your device. Sean, go look it up. Look up what it takes to attune to that sword.
Well, again,
if nothing else, you have a desire to do it because you want the sword, you want the necklace, you want the wand, you want the thing. Look it up. Here's the book.
All right. So here's yet another one you guys touched on, which could have interesting consequences. Encumbrance. With this one, I would have enjoyed hearing your debate on the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. Because again, the rule could be categorically thrown out without a second thought by simply declaring that it's just meaningless bookkeeping. However, I would argue that at least some measure of adoption of encumbrance rule can also lead to important and meaningful character decisions, which I think we've touched on, right? I've brought that up in the past.
We absolutely have. We have brought it up in the past, and it's the only way. Maybe.
How do you want to play? What do you want to do? Right? Do you want to have encumbrance tied to a story piece? Like, hey, it's really important whether you're carrying 1,000 pounds or not, and what does that lead to? Like, if you're not going to rid Smaug's treasure, and you're going to start wheeling in mining carts, right?
Correct.
Important, meaningful character decisions such as, okay, so your halfling thief is mortally wounded. You drop that heavy treasure chest here in the crypt in order to pick up your friend and carrying him out. Perfect example, because you can't carry them both. Yeah, I'm all about, give them hard choices. And it forces PCs to make slightly more mundane but also interesting choices, like they can't carry around plate armor for big fights, leather armor for sneaking around, court suits for political encounters, winter clothing and camping supplies, and 4 weeks of food and water and other adventuring gear without a mule or something. I mean, come on, make a few decisions about your character's style and priorities. You can't carry around everything in the PHB, weapons, armor, and equipment lists. Even these mundane decisions help shape who your character is, so you don't just throw out the rule without considering the consequences. So encumbrance and directly addressing James. If it gets too crazy out of hand, I as a GM would put the hammer down. Like, no, you are not going to, like, this is a ton of gold and you have this, or you have a plate armor. Are you wearing it? No, you're not wearing it. Tell me when you're wearing it. Like, there's a lot of questions that have to go back and forth for those that are trying to kind of pull bullshit, I guess.
Well, and this is similar to the, communication thing that Sean and I and every other, anybody spouting advice or theories of advice is that, look, this is how I'm going to deal with encumbrance in this game. You all can do essentially, quote unquote, whatever you want, but don't let it get stupid. An example is X, Y, and Z. Oh, I get that. That's okay. So I do. The important piece here is the considering the consequences, right? So even when Brett throws the towel and says, fuck it, no grappling tonight. I don't understand those rules. I didn't take a chance to look it up. Nobody can find them right now. Fuck it. Let's make it 2 die rolls and move on. Great. Done. Somebody should go look it up, understand it, or at least bookmark the damn thing. So next time it happens, we know where to go.
Yeah.
Because that way we may have made one mistake, but we don't want to continue to make the same mistake and, damn the consequences, because that's not good.
Another consequence is the potential to lose consistency, which can lead to imbalance or a lack of fairness.
Whoa, that's just what I was touching on. Good stuff.
But this is perhaps where I have to admit my own hangups. My fear is that if I wing it this time, then a few sessions later, when the same circumstance comes up again, will I rule it the same way again? Will I remember what I did last time? In my experience, I have forgotten prior rulings and flip-flopped on my calls, so that's why getting a player to look up the rule is important to me. I just can't trust myself to be consistent next time. As always, thank you for an awesome podcast. Your faithful listener, James Carruthers, Vancouver, BC.
Well, let's see, James, that's why I have a mind like a steel trap. It's rusty and corroded, but by God, it's still steel. No, that's a very good point, right? Is that when certain rules, if you're playing D&D, as I am wont to do, and you have a way around grappling, you're like, okay, this is what we're doing. Everyone goes, oh, in Brett's group, we've been playing with Brett for 20 plus years. We understand how he goes around grappling. Fine. But then along comes Chad and Austin, and they haven't played with Brett for 20 years, and they want to grapple somebody. And Brett goes, yes, do this thing. And they go, the fuck do you mean do this thing? We have rules. I know these rules, says Austin. And Brett tries to go around it and everything else, then, well, that's just silly. We have somebody who knows the actual rule. You should use it. I pride myself. I have been very consistent in the house rule, the zero rule, the thing I've had to do to keep things moving. And part of that is because in most cases, it's, made it up winged it once, winged it twice. Fuck it. Somebody look that up. We're not doing this again. Okay. That's what it is. This is the rule. Go forward. Or somebody looks it up offline or whatever. So that's why I think the consistency tends to be there, because it doesn't go very long. I've not had anybody ever build a grappling character, so I've never really had to deal with that in like a D&D game. But James, these are all good, dude. I gave you a little shit for coming at me, but man, this is good stuff. Like I said, I hope at some point, James, you, Sean, and I get a chance to sit down at a con, grab a beer, a coffee, or something, and talk through this stuff. Because this is where, like Sean said, we're kind of ping-ponging it back and forth. We said something a couple episodes ago. Boom, James hits a line drive over the net. I'm trying to bump it back up, saying, well, actually, what I meant was that's hard to do. And James, I really appreciate you taking the time. This is well thought out, and I love the spell analogy. That's really good. That is really, really sticking in my brain right now. I love that.
In a very well written email. Like I could read it, and it actually had good grammar and punctuation and everything. So
yeah, very nice.
Very refreshing to read. Thanks so much for writing in. And now we will continue to try to come up with another topic that will actually get under your skin and piss you off.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
Apparently I've got a knack for it. It takes me about 100 episodes, but I'm going to get James again.
Continuing on.
All right. Chris Steele says, hey guys, just wanted to send you a quick note and say congratulations on 100 episodes. Huge accomplishment, and I really enjoyed the topic. Like Sean, I got out of gaming in college and ended up rediscovering it about 7 years ago. Took about a 15-year break. Can't imagine stopping again. Although I do from time to time take small breaks to let the creative energy recharge. During those times, you can find me binging on the newest board games where the rules are more concrete and they don't have to worry about what comes next, since I'm always the DM when we play RPGs. Side note, I'm really looking forward to GameholeCon, grabbing a beer with the gaming BSers and talking games live. That'll be so cool, Chris. I'm also running a game under your banner, Savage Worlds Fantasy. I'll be happy to chat about it for your mini BS episode. Just let me know. Keep up the great podcasting, and still waiting for an episode on diceless games. It's coming, Chris. I've got that in the hopper. I think I might have to pull in some assistance because Sean has never run nor played diceless before, so I might have to pull in a little assistance to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and Chris, I will contact you about recording something. And thank you so much for opting to run under our banner and lowering the standard of your GMing to fit into.
Yeah, because people are expecting there's either a train or a crazy whatever wing it sandbox. So apparently you're going to do one of those two. No, I'm kidding. It'll be good to have you there. You
can only up our standard.
Exactly.
Right.
We can only be better by proximity to game masters other than ourselves.
We are soliciting game masters so that it actually makes us look better.
Oh, hell yeah. Just by proximity.
Right.
I'll read the next one since you had the real long one there.
Feel free, dude.
Matt Martinez about episode 101, At What Cost? I can't hear talk about player agency anymore without thinking about a guy in one of the Facebook groups I joined who has very specific ideas about player agency and immersion. And any game that doesn't follow his philosophy for those things is objectively bad.
Well, of course, right.
Of course.
Well, yeah.
This can include things like character classes because he finds them too limiting, metagame mechanics like fate aspects because they force the player to think outside his character's point of view, and more specifically Star Wars Edge of the Empire's custom dice because he feels the advantages and threats limit player agency. The fuck? Sorry, my aside there. Because they place limitations on the outcomes of their roles. He may have points in some of these, but the vehemence of his opinions makes his justifications feel more like rationalizations, as if he can't just say, I really don't care for this, and have done with it. I'll tell you what, Matt, that is that's probably one of my single pet peeves in any of the communities I've seen on Google Plus or Facebook or even at gaming convention. You're talking to somebody, and they have this weird roundabout rationalization why they think this thing you love is dumber than hell. And you're like, so... yeah, but I like it. Like, well, yeah, I guess if it's your thing. Well, that's all you really had to say was that piece. Like, I don't like that game. Why? Man, I just don't like the funky dice. I don't like the way it does the results or whatever. It just does. It's just not for me, man. Oh, okay, cool. Carry on. That's really all you have to do. You don't have to tell everybody that they're stupid and wrong or make them feel bad,
right? Because
they're playing a game you don't like.
Come on, nerds. Like, we need to get over ourselves and just be who we are and have our opinions. Nothing wrong with that. But let's not freaking hammer on each other's heads, man. Like, we got to come together on it and say, hey, that's not my thing, man. I don't like to roll that way. And that's cool. But to tell somebody like, oh, this is what's completely wrong with it and it totally sucks and it's like the shittiest game made and all this other crap has got to go.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't appreciate it.
Yeah. But thanks so much for the comment, Matt, on G+. Much appreciated.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into the topic, man.
Let's do it.
Episode 102, main topic, Brett.
Yeah, I want to talk about gaming away from the table. This is something that I had in the hopper for a while. And, of course, Monte Cook's new Invisible Sun Kickstarter. We're not going to talk about the cost because I could give two shits whether or not you think it's expensive or not. I mean, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to pay for it, don't pay for it. It's whatever. What I'm more interested in...
hold on a second, Brett.
Sorry.
You're
going to complain because I just told you I don't give two shits about your opinion.
Having said that, did you kick in?
Did I? I don't know. And that's...
You don't know if you kicked in?
No, I don't know if I'm going to.
Oh.
I would totally know if I spent $200.
I was going to say.
Know.
Yeah.
If I spent $197 or whatever it is, I would totally know if I did that.
So you've not done it to this point?
Not to this point.
I see.
So one of the things that he brings up in there when you read through it is this concept of metagaming. I mean, this is like metagaming in the pure sense. It's gaming away from the table, or it's any, where I've stated before, the truth is at the table. It's that concept of gaming off the table, one-off sessions with people. There's going to be an app for Android and iOS and so forth. I believe it's a web app based on the Kickstarter, and how you can have side scenes with you and the game master and different ways to interact with the game to keep it going when you're not at the actual gaming session. And part of it comes down to, people can't, if you listen to, I'll keep pimping Chris Sneezak's really good interview on This Directed Mark in the Lounge. He talked to Monte Cook not that long ago. And if you get a chance, get out there, grab that, listen to it. Monte goes through the why. So if you want to know why he's doing it and so forth. However, what I wanted to talk about now was I've had experiences doing this in a less sophisticated manner, over the years with my group. And I don't know if Sean has had any of this type of experiences or not. The only thing that kind of I want to talk about some of the cool stuff and some of the things I think might be hard and or make the game, that type of gaming, something I may want, but I just don't think I can do anymore. Make sense, Sean?
Yeah, man. Totally makes sense.
So, Sean, have you had any experience with that gaming away from the tables type of stuff?
The one example that I would say is gaming away from the table would be potentially a play-by-post, which is kind of not at a table anyways. Which may be on one end of the scale and not necessarily.
But that was, so you didn't have an actual table game plus a play-by-post, because
that is a good
we're talking
point.
about, this is, your regular table game plus, and we're talking about the plus component to it.
So I have not run that. I have been a part of that.
What type of game was it? Was it like a D&D game?
Yeah, it was a D&D game. Buddy of mine was running. Go to the table, blah, 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 blah. Break. Not going to play for a little while. He writes up a bunch of the story and what may be going on with my character from the actual break of play to the next session. So even from one session to the next, writing up, here's what happens, who you run into.
Were you able to interact with them, like over email type of thing, or?
Yeah. I mean, we could interact. Well, we didn't do it quite that way. Like, it wasn't more transactional back and forth. Although, I'm trying to think if that has occurred to me in the past. I don't know. I think I gotta say somewhere I've run into that where it's, tell me what's going on during your break. Tell me what your character is doing or wanting to do. So maybe it's like, hey, I'm a magic user. I research X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. Sounds good. This is the result of that. Come back to the table, pick up where we left off.
Fair enough. This started for me when I first ran with my core group, the guys I've been with for 20 plus years. We would play Vampire, the World of Darkness stuff constantly. And it was every week for the longest time. Then I moved down to Madison for school. I transferred colleges down here. And I can only get back up once a month. I'm a college kid. I can't afford to go home that often. Once a month is it. So everyone's starting to get email. We're starting to get into this whole technology thing. I said, guess what, guys? We just called it downtime. At the end of a session, so we go, do we get any downtime between here and the next time? Yes, everyone has 2 weeks worth of stuff you can try to do. If you want to do something, players, email me what it is you're trying to accomplish. I had a raft of emails from the 12, 13 different people, whomever was playing, would say, hey, I want to do this, 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 and this, and this. And I would say, okay, you try to get this far, this happens. It was almost like a play-by-post in a way, where they would respond to me, then I would respond back to them. We'd have a little back and forth, say, okay, this is a good place. We'll pick this up in the next game. So we'd do that over email quite often. It never really, it didn't take on a life of its own. It was downtime stuff. When you got back, the really cool shit always happened at the table. It was all very sidebar-y type of activity. I had time. I wasn't married, no kids, no dog, no real job, just college and a part-time job. So your brain could be thinking about gaming and focus on that, and you could just do that. You could just say, I'm going to stay up till 4 a.m. and write responses to people.
No adulting.
No adulting. Adulting sucks. It's totally hard. Excuse me. When it really got crazier, I mean, that type of downtime is essentially a standard that I haven't. We used to do it a lot in my group, but we've gotten away from it, partly because of adulting gets in the way. When it really went crazy, though, was the first Amber game I ran. Speaking of diceless stuff, from our listener before, when we were talking about, when we got into that, everyone except for a couple different folks was active on email at the time. And a couple people who just flat weren't, they just never checked them, didn't get into it. And they said, hey, can we do the downtime thing? I said, sure, absolutely. You guys can talk to each other if you like. You can do all sorts of stuff. And these are, these are the downtime parameters, rules that we'd had in the group for a very long time. It just fucking took off because the nature of Amber, no dice, the adjudication was something that they kind of figured out and picked up on their own. They were cutting and wheeling and dealing and doing and making things happen. I would get an email that says, hey, Brett, how long would it take for me to get, 15 white tigers that are as strong as a Tyrannosaurus Rex? I'm like, I don't know. Like, if you walk through shadow, you can do blah, blah, blah. Those are the type, I would get these weird, thanks, that's all I needed. And then, okay. And they were off and running, just totally metagame between each other. And other people come to me and say, hey, I'm in this situation, you need to talk to this person, bam, bam, bam. That game, in real lifetime, had we not done that, would probably taken me 6 to 9 months in real life of 1 month sessions to get hold of. We did it in about 4 months, and half the time easily. Because all the metagame stuff was real, honest-to-God, story, moving, shaking, changing type of activity that happened. So we would come to the game, everyone had gamed, right? Most of the people had already played. The downside, and this is kind of touchy on that, was the couple guys who weren't into the email were totally left out. They were like sessions and sessions behind because for 20 days or whatever between each game, these other guys were going bam, bam, bam. These men and women were just boom, 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 back and forth with data, and we're gaming and we're doing. And poor Chris, the one guy we were gaming with, he just wasn't able to keep up. He did not know what the fuck was going on, and it was a very disappointing game for him. The people that were into it loved it, just loved the hell out of it. But I had 2-3 other people that weren't able to get into it, and that's kind of where we had to break that off, because you couldn't have that type of meta off-table gaming and be fair to everybody, because not everybody could get into it, at least the team we had at the time. The other one I had that strikes me when I thought back about this was Lenny and Beta. Their characters were kind of at each other's throats doing different things, and Lenny gets a letter. He was living in Minnesota at the time. He gets a physical letter in the mail addressed to his character from Beta's character. The whole thing is written in character. He goes through it, reads it. At the bottom of it says, "Oh, P.S. This entire thing has been contact poisoned. I hope you know how to make a will save," or whatever it was. And that was it. And Lenny's like, "Motherfucker." So I get an email that says, "Hey, Brett, this just happened to me. What I have to roll, or what I have to do?" It was kind of crazy. They took that on themselves to do that. I didn't encourage or make them do it. It was just something they wanted to do for fun.
Was Lenny okay?
Well, he's okay. He's got his hands a little kind of curled up now from it, but he seems all right.
My God.
Yeah. I mean, you can only take so much cyanide before something's going to happen.
It's crazy. Again, we don't promote killing players.
Promote, suggest, 2 different words. Totally different words.
We understand it, though.
We understand it. So I told you that story, and those stories, I should say. It's fun. It was a ton of fun. And there was this wonderful piece that when I was at the day job, I didn't have kids at this time, and you're working, and you get a second, you could check your email, and you could jump right back into the game. That idea of you're never not able to game in the game that you're really, really loving. There's something that's incredibly cool about it. A lot of players, they love their character. They want to advance him or her. They want to push different boundaries, do different things. There's something so amazingly cool. It's not, and maybe immersion is an odd word, and I don't know how to accurately define it per se, or whether it's deep immersion or whatever. But at any moment's notice, they could just kind of turn that switch, click the inbox in your email and say, "Oh, this is what's going on right now." You could step back into that at any time, which was kind of cool. Sean, what is that? Does that sound cool to you, or does it sound like something like, "Oh yeah, people do that, but it's not my thing"?
I think it's cool. The downtime thing, that's a mechanic in 5e now.
Yes, there's an actual mechanic for that in 5e, yeah. But that's not a role playing mechanic. I mean, not a actual face to face talky discussing role playing mechanic. It's just a die rolly mechanic.
Well, it is, but you could turn it into something a little bit more robust.
Yes, it could be expanded. Absolutely.
So I do think it's pretty cool, but I also think it can require quite a bit of legwork, and it also depends on the players, because some players just show up at the table and that's when they game, and any other time is they don't have enough time to dive into that and write letters to another player, and so I think it adds an element to the game. But what if only 2 players are embracing that out of the group?
Yeah. No, absolutely, and that's kind of why I brought up the Ember story. It was amazing how fast the story itself resolved, how they were able to do really cool things, this great events, great story points, great plots and changes and twists and hooks and just awesome shit. But I had 3 people who were left out. they were not really engaged. And so I had to kind of revamp the downtime rule for my group and say, look, we can't, I can't go that far without having such and such at the table. Now, the people in question at the time no longer are with the group because they've moved on and they've moved to different locations and they don't play with us anymore. But even so, it's a commitment. It's a level of commitment that the game master and the players both have to pick up. I have tried to do kind of a casual play-by-post on Google Plus with Lenny and a couple other guys, Lenny Alpha and Beta, just the four of us were going to do something. And I got to a certain point, work and life took over, and it died. It just died on me. And I look at the concept of the gaming away from the game, being able to do this and engage with it, and I think, given the current tool set I have, it becomes harder for me to quickly get back into the game and do something. And maybe this app that Monte Cook is looking to build for Invisible Sun is a better tool set. Because right now, my tools are, the free internet tools, right? I can use a Google Doc, I can use email, I can use communities on G Plus or some kind of posting like that, something along those lines to interact, or I could do something like a Skype call. But even that can be pretty time intensive when you don't have a lot of it. But I think you're dead on that if you have 4 or 5 guys at the table and one of them can't, won't, doesn't want to, then either that person doesn't play that game or you need to play a game that they can get into. Because it will alienate the player who doesn't want to or can't do it.
Now, I think with Monty's game, though, it's I think it may be a one-on-one or an individual thing that they may be able to do. Like, I think even Chris's interview might have talked about story development because Monty corrected him on, I think it would have been character development and going into more story development. So what does that mean? We're only going to be able to find out when they actually launch it. But I think maybe it's an aspect of the game that allows Sean to, hey, I can't get to the table. I'm going to do something that will advance my character in the story, but not have to rely on what's actually happening at the table.
Correct.
So I am in absence. I'm absent from the table, but if Sean decides to do, take a half hour or 15 minutes to write up something about his character and what they're doing, and they get XP or whatever reward mechanism may or may not be involved, then I can see that coming into play. Monty's Kickstarter is a whole nother topic. Again, go to Misdirected Mark and listen to Chris interview him. And I think there's still going to be a lot of what does this look like when it's launched?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, an app, somebody could say Ingress is gaming. Somebody could role play an Ingress game where you incorporate Ingress into your role playing game and say, okay, you got to go and hack a portal and there's these coordinates. And when you do that, let me know or whatever that looks like. I don't know.
I think
maybe they're going there to accomplish something in the game, but it's on their way to work and they stop and they take a screenshot of them hacking a portal. If you're not familiar with Ingress, it's kind of augmented reality. It's before Pokemon. Niantic did it. You can go around hacking portals in the real world, well, virtual world, whatever.
Well, I think the other piece that you hit on is the other thing that Monty mentioned in the interview is around the fact that it's not for the group, right?
Right.
So what I mean by that is your traditional D&D game where you have a party, you got a fighter, a thief, a cleric, the magic user, and a ranger, and they're all trying to do something, right?
Right.
Down in a dungeon, blah, blah, blah. This type of gaming, what I have experienced, like with my Amber game and my World of Darkness games, it doesn't work like that. Amber and World of Darkness can be very character-driven versus group-driven. You can bring everyone together and say, hey, guess what? All that shit that the 6 of you have been fucking around with, now Chicago's on fire, the prince is dead, and the sheriff is trying to do blah, 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 blah. You could blow the whole damn city up. Everyone has to come together, which is what I would do periodically. Everyone has to come together, interact with each other, share data, do a thing, and then once the big hubbub had been solved, fixed, whatever, they would go back to their individual plot lines. The characters would then divide up from the group, and then Zave would say, okay, I'm going to go back to my to my thing. I'm trying to work on this banking deal. Boyd would say, okay, I go back to my art gallery, take care of this other thing. And then they would kind of like I said, they would gather, fix the problem, then dissolve out. Excuse me. And it works in those types of settings better. And you have to have a group of people that don't mind having quiet time at the table, because that's where the downtime helps, and where perhaps this concept of what Monty's trying to do would also help, is that if Sean is doing some really cool shit this week, and his character and, Phil's character, the two vampires, are super engaged with the Prince of the City doing something, but Chris is working a long con somewhere, and his vampire is just kind of working it slowly. He might not have a lot of activity to do. So he doesn't get a lot of spotlight that game session. 2 game sessions later, it's all about Chris and the long con that he finally pulled off. But anyway, I guess where I'm going is your D&D, Dungeon Crawl Classics, Torchbearer, going to go down the dungeon, kill some shit, and then come back out. That's not a really good way to, at least in my experiences, to do that type of gaming away from the table perspective. Because it can be very difficult, the way I've done it anyway, it can be very difficult to pull that off. Because then how do you say, well, okay, you fought 16, rooms into the ancient dwarven mine. Now the group will dissolve and you'll all go out and investigate individually because you'll get killed. You don't want to do that. You're in as a group. The game is designed to be as a group. Where the games like Vampire and Amber especially have a player versus player aspect, or a player competing with player aspect, and you're able to build character development differently than you do in some of the more traditional games. Kind of rambling there. I'm sorry, Sean. Does that make sense to you? Or
yeah, no, but you could also look at, some people will play a role-playing game and then for mass combat switch to another game. Now, I don't know if that's away from the table necessarily and fits into the example scenario that you have put forth, Brett, but I know some people will, Star Wars, Edge of the Empire, they may play the role-playing game, and then it's time for Starship Combat. They may move to the Star Wars miniatures game to resolve that.
Well, that's an interesting piece, right? Because if you can't, I like that. That's neat. Because then if you have a ship-to-ship battle and you have a couple people on the ship who have nothing to do with the actual fight, they don't have to be involved in the miniatures battle, right?
Right.
I just have to know if the ship blows up because I'm the doctor. I don't know how to fix the gun. I can't fire the gun. I can't do shit. That's not my job. I need the pilot, the navigator, and the mechanic. Somebody tell me if it's working, and then that's about it. So that's another way. I like that. That's kind of interesting. I think the tool sets that I have right now available to me, as I said, limit me perhaps in how I can do it, but maybe I could get more creative with different tools or letters and emails and blah, blah, blah. But the other thing that really hits me is just time. I look at, we kicked off my Trail of Cthulhu game for you, Kevin, Wayne, and Jim, and we play every 2 weeks. I wanted to get some shit done last week for that game, and it just didn't happen. I had a crappy week at work, and it just didn't get done. And I think about looking at a game like Invisible Sun with what might be the time needed or the intensity of time to put into it. Do I have that commitment? Can I make such a commitment to my group where I would, I didn't do that for Trail of Cthulhu. I didn't promise you guys, hey, I'm going to do 10 different write-ups. We'll have these great off-stage, off-table interactions, blah, blah, blah. We didn't set that precedent. I thought, hey, maybe I could do something cool. Just didn't pan out. But if that's the premise of what we want to do, we all really, really want to do it because it sounds super sexy cool and we think this would be fucking great. But man, I don't know if I have the time, between the different components and having to adult, as you said, I don't know if I could pull it off anymore like I used to, just because I don't have the time. Those vampire games, when we would do it, we played every week, or even when we were every month. It was weeks of downtime would happen, weeks of emails back and forth, figuring things out. So when we came to the next session every month, it was just locked and loaded and ready to go. Fuck, I don't think I have the time to do that anymore.
And I wonder how much of, this is more speculating on Monty's game, Monte Cook Games game, Invisible Sun, but I wonder how much of it is, maybe it's an app that asks you, I'm the GM, Brett is the player, and I say, Brett is going to be out or missing or whatever and not at the table. And that automatically takes Brett to the app on his phone. And then Brett chooses one of three things his character does. And it's already prefabricated, made up options. And then that turns into a flowchart. Because I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around Monty's big thing is he hates to hear people say, I can't play because I don't have enough time. So how do you get people to play but not spend any time playing?
So I think the goal of that, so the counterpoint to Brett doesn't have the time, is that I either have to have a tool that enables me to work better, or I have to better constrain what happens, right?
Right.
I think you hit something there for me. Like, look, guys, you have three things you could do. Go right, go left, go straight, go back. Blam, 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 blam. Something along those lines. Just X number of options. And instead of a wide open, you can do whatever you want, and you can try to do this. You could talk to this guy. That makes it harder and harder. If the options to go out, if I want to do this with my group now, like if I were to say, hey, we're going to fucking do this with the Trail of Cthulhu group, I think this would be awesome. We'll make up some deep immersion. We can do this kind of off-table gaming. This would be great. But we need to have boundaries. Like, these are the things you can do off camera, right? These are the things that Sean can do the same as everybody else can do. These are the type of options you could do. Kind of to your point of the D&D 5e, the downtime mechanic, taking that concept and expanding it a little bit. Limited, perhaps, things you can do, but stuff that you could still do that would help propel your character development forward. Instead of it being, as it used to be for me back in the old days, is what would you like to do? Well, I'm going to run 5 different long cons and talk to these 16 people and do this other thing and make 10 different phone calls and blah, blah, blah. And then you just sit down and take you 2 hours to react to an email. Well, I don't have that luxury anymore. With 8, 9 guys playing, you don't have the time. I don't have 2 hours per person to do. So if you limit it, then it doesn't take me 2 hours to respond to Sean. It takes me 5 minutes. Because Sean said, oh, of the 4 options you gave me, I picked number 1. Great. I can provide an answer to number 1. Boom, we're done, and move on. That way it's a faster back and forth instead of a wide open back and forth. That is a way. I hadn't thought about that, but I like that.
That's what I'm here for, man.
I know. Anyway, I didn't know if this is something that you'd ever done much, or if it was even, does this type of immersion into a game, this type of, I want to play even if I'm not at the table, does that interest you at all? Is that something that you go, oh my God, I totally want to do that?
I don't know how Monty's Invisible Sun is going to facilitate it. It does interest me.
Well, not even his, but I mean, is the concept interesting to you?
Well, it depends on how it's pulled off, because if it's something where it's different than what we are talking about, then I may be. But there's always a time component, whether you're a game master or you're a player. If you're not at the table and you're wanting to facilitate discussion against, with another player, another non-player character, another player character, then there is a time thing involved, and it could be on the player side and the GM side. So I've worked in had games where you've had that and facilitated it, but I don't know. I think it's good, but I think it's still ambitious.
So it's something that's interesting to you, but you'd have to see the mechanism, the mechanics behind it, basically.
Well, I wouldn't.
Right. I mean, if I was to say, look, fuck Forgotten Son, or Invisible Sun, sorry, I'm not even going to do that. I want to do something similar like I've done before, but I'm going to do it like X. As long as X seemed to be within acceptable parameters, you'd be in for it.
Well, you're asking me to make a decision based on stuff I don't know.
No, what I'm trying to get you to do is say whether or not you're at all even interested in this concept.
I could be.
What you've said is I'm interested if it'll work. Well, yeah. Well, who isn't interested? Tell me if it works.
That's true, but I think when we talk about gaming away from the table, so some of the examples we brought up was like writing a letter to another, player character in character, writing a letter to somebody. That takes time. You could have a forum post that says, "On my downtime, I'm doing X, Y, and Z." If the expectations are just I'm doing X and Y, and it takes me 2 minutes to post that, then sure, maybe. And it's pertinent and the game master is going to incorporate some of that. Or maybe it's just hey, I need to know what you're going to do with that stupid thing you collected because it's important to the plot. Or, me as a GM, I may know that it's cursed and I just need to know if you still have it and here's what's happening to you and it's conveyed to me. Sure, some of that stuff I think is understandable. But if it's like, hey, we're going to have a 3-month gap and we're going to play and take this all kind of offline and we're going to do all this enriched storytelling and character development, it may be like something I'm not wholly wanting to invest in. I'd rather be at the table because that's kind of what it's about to me.
No, fair. So no, that's very fair. That's a Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if that answers your question, man. I'm riding the fence a little bit, but
it does.
All right.
It helps. He's on the video. He's giving me the fence motion with his hand there.
The big chop.
So I think it does help because the time commitment, the type in not only just the time commitment, but the type of gaming. My preference is at the table.
Correct.
Right. I would much rather be there.
Yes.
If the game turns into a play-by-post or a play away from the table game, that's no longer the game I'm really interested in. The core truth that has to happen has to be the truth at the table with most of the players. I think having perhaps the opportunity to have, again, depending on the setting, if you're in the middle of a dungeon, it's not always easy to just peel a character off. And I know there's ways to do it, but for the sake of time, in my Bad Magic game, it's pretty easy for somebody, if Kevin can't make the next game, which he can't, that's okay. There's stuff his character could do. Kevin could easily give me a bullet point list of 5 different things he wants to accomplish while he's on vacation. Fine, I can work that in. So next time he shows up, I can answer bam, bam, bam. Yes, you got that. No, that didn't work. You got in a fight with this guy. Got a black eye. I could answer those things pretty lickety split. Without having to invest a lot of time in it. So I think perhaps instead of it necessarily being a very integral part of a gaming system that you're using with your team or your group or your whatever you want to call your crew, it can be a supplemental component. Again, if you're playing a part-time Gods of Fate game and one of you can't make it, perhaps a tool you can use is like, look, give me 5 points, 5 bulleted things that you want to get done or you want to do, or answer these questions for me. So that way when you come back to the game next session, I can give you something that you've done and I can continue to help you develop your character and stay engaged in the game. Because part of what happens is somebody misses a game session. If they feel that they've missed too much, that they weren't a part of something, yeah, sometimes like, well, get your dumb ass to the game, asshole. Then you play. Sometimes you just can't help it. Family emergency, blah, blah. But if you have something where you get to come to the game with some knowledge, with a thing that you've accomplished, even though you didn't make it last time, I think it helps to keep the group together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think there was I don't know if it was Monty's game. I don't know if it was that or somebody else was talking about kind of this interdimension. It might have been another podcast where it was, if somebody doesn't make it, they go into this other world. I'm pretty sure it's a visible sun, and I can't remember the terminology or the world, but they go. And to me, it's like, that's not a bad idea. Some people do I think we're getting into another topic, but if you're not there, what happens to your character, blah.
Yep.
But what if you phase in to another dimension and it's a completely different world and it impacts nothing of what the storyline is on the prime material plane. And then when you come back, what does that mean? Do you know anything? Huh. Maybe you don't know anything because you were literally gone. So maybe it's the players that are on the prime material plane to explain to Brett, here's what happened while you were gone and phased out of existence. And now that you're back, and then you're like, how much time went by? And maybe it was just literally an hour, 2 hours, a day, or maybe it's 3 years. And this is what has transpired. So I think there's different ways to handle somebody that's absent. Yeah,
I think just the whole concept of the gaming away from the table, the more metagaming aspects. There have been computer games that have done this, where you've got clues within source code, you've got tons of web pages out there, you've got all this crazy stuff that you can get into. Apart from tearing that apart, saying, oh, what about longevity? Can I play the same game in 20 years? What if the websites don't exist? Without getting into those components of it, I just think the concept is really interesting. It's one of those things that, as a gamer, as one of the alpha gamers, who watches the scene, who pays attention to shit, tries to keep track of stuff like all of our listeners do, we're trying to, sort things out and just see, ooh, this looks cool and maybe this new thing will be fun. It's a really interesting thing to think about. I don't know if I'm going to end up buying it because I want to see how it's done. I want to see what he does and then be able to take snippets of it, hack the shit out of it and use it for myself. Or if I'm going to do it because I'm like, look, I think I could get a crew of, 4 men and women who could really, really get into this so I can do it. Regardless, though, this concept is really interesting to me because it's one of those pieces to, I love gaming. We talked about this in episode 100, right? I wish I could game more. And I gave you shit for it, but you're right, is if the execution is really, really good, if there's a way to execute this thing, that's really cool. If it's done well and there's a really good way to that we can execute against it, and I can walk instead of seeing 50-year-old men catching Pokemon in the hallways at work, if I could be walking between meetings and playing my RPG instead of catching Pokemon, that'd be fucking cool. Right? If I'm sitting in a meeting and people are running 15 minutes late or I'm bored out of my skull, I'd much rather be able to do that than anything else. That would be pretty cool. I'm telling that to a recruiter right now. So this way, when I'm looking for a job, he's like, so what are you doing in your downtime? Anyway, I guess if anybody else has had experience doing this type of thing, I would be interested to see what you learned, what you thought about it, if it worked, if it didn't work for you, if there are better tools than email or play by post, if there's other options out there that people have used that have worked really well, I'd love to hear about those things because some of the games that I run would really fit that type of gaming well. I just I want to do it. I really want to do it, and I want to do it better.
All right, let's get into die roll.
Let's do it. Sean's sick of me.
Die roll. Brett has 2. I have 2. Got 3 from listeners. Brett, go ahead.
Yeah, so there is a Chicago's Clown Graveyard. I had to call this out for anybody else like me. The first thing you think of when you see a clown graveyard is that's a good start. There's a circus train wreck. And basically, it's this massive, 86 dead. This huge mass grave was buried, where a bunch of clowns and circus folk were laid to rest after this massive accident. All joking, of course, on murdering clowns. But anyhow, it's one of those that I read that it's in Chicago, and I think about my Bad Magic game that's running in Chicago right now, and I could just see this spirits of undead clowns torturing my players, and that sounds cool to me. The other one I have is there is a a massive underground cave in the dense jungles of Vietnam, and this national park here. It's a really cool article, and the neat thing about this to me is when you see this type of thing, you're like, this is on our planet. There's this crazy big fucking cave on our planet that's gigantic. You see the photos on here. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And hardly anybody knows it's there. It's just crazy that something that big could exist and, millions and millions of people not know it's there. So I take that to my fantasy worlds and to my gaming worlds and think how, when somebody said, well, how did no one know that this lost dwarven mine was in the mountains? Fuck, there's a huge ass cave in the jungle. No one knew where it was. As people go up looking in the mountains for this crap, it's really interesting to read these things and just understand how big something can be and be hidden completely in plain sight. Anyway, that's what I had. Your turn, Sean.
Who the fuck is my D&D character? A backstory generator. which I think would
love
be
this.
which would be awesome for cons. Like, here's your backstory. Just go to this website, hit refresh, tell me what your backstory is.
So I'm on it right now. I'm going to roll the stats for a fucking conscientious elf monk from a large family who just wants their money back. Then there's a link underneath that says, that sounds fucking terrible. You hit it again. Check this shit out. I'm going to be a fucking hateful human monk from a nomad circus who's trying to avoid a prophecy. It's this type of ambitious half-orc sorcerer from Young Offenders Institute who's always needs to be the center of attention.
Yeah, I mean, this is DCC, man. Just zero
it's
level.
totally-
Here's your backstory.
Yeah. It's just, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It is just awesome.
Number 2 for me, Token Making by Devin Knight. So there's a couple YouTube videos. I posted the link to the first one. There is a part 2. There is no audio, I don't believe, but shows you how to make, I guess how to is, it's kind of, because he doesn't narrate a lot of it. He's going through Photoshop, but if you watch it and you know Photoshop, you could probably come to grips with how to make up some cool tokens for your virtual tabletop. So check that out as a resource as
Very nice.
As the VTT realm grows.
So from listeners' perspective, the Pure Mongrel, he hits us with one. There is a drive-through RPG Mythos sale, Lovecraft's birthday. This thing will be going for, I think, about 7 more days when this thing drops on, the 22nd, 23rd. So this will be going for a little bit. Go out to Drive-Thru RPG, take a look. He also posted a link to the Ultimate Lord of the Rings Hobbit Blu-ray set. This thing looks pretty freaking cool. I just don't have the cash to throw at that, especially if I'm going to be buying, especially if I get it on Invisible Sun, I'll even have less money.
Right.
And then finally, Matt Bonhoff warns us about giant snakes in Maine. So I can only hope that Roger Bracelet and the others who live out there are not eaten by this massive snake that lives in the forests of Maine. That's just one more thing when you see that, like this again, like big massive caves that no one knows are there. Huge critters just roaming around, don't belong there, but hey, there they are. That's cool stuff.
There you have it.
We good, man?
We are good. Brett, what can we ask of listener?
Well, I think the first thing we could ask of listeners is, tell someone about the show. If you like what we're doing, if you like what we said, tell people about it. We love good reviews on iTunes. The Patreon page is always nice, but I'll tell you what, just spreading the word and having people listen to us. The more listeners, the better feedback we get, the cool insights we pull from you guys. So, keep it coming. Tell those men and women gamers out there about us, and hopefully we'll hear from all soon.
Yes. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for everything. Thanks for joining us. What are we talking about next week, Brett?
Next week, episode 103, we're going to talk about stealing the plot. I got a little something on my sleeve for that one. That should be fun.
A plot of land.
Exactly, a plot of land. It's mostly land grabbing. It's a land grabs game. It'll be good.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Excellent.
It's kind of like Amway, but for land. It'll be fun.
Oh, excellent. Multi-level marketing.
Exactly.
All right. Excellent. So, on behalf of and inclusive of for us, Be Gaming NBS, I'm one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brett. Good night, good game and all.
Gaming NBS produced with the help from the following patrons: Christian Sexy Voice Serrano, Kevin Lovecraft, Joe Swick, Brett's Biggest Fan, Steve Day, Jeff Rademacher, Forrest DeGarry, Mark Anthony Benedetti, Bruce Cunnington, Eric Jeppesen, Andy Hall, Misdirected Mark Productions, Sean Nicholson, Tim Jensen, Chris Steele, Old School DM, Knights of the Night Crew, Palladian, Jason the Beard Blaylock, Remy Bilodeau, Jason Hobbs, Mirko Froelich, Wayne Lumrunner Humfleet, James Carpio, Not Caprio, Mark Tasaka, Tony Baker, Not So Pure Mongrel, Lord Tentacle, Brett Pazinski, Corey Johnston, Tim Shorts, Eric Tankar, and Brandon Barnes. Consider becoming a patron. For the cost of a coffee shop coffee, you can support the show for an entire month. Whoa.
Want me to stop?